We are watching the impact of major changes coming from Washington in the first days of President Trump's second term. The president hit the ground running, especially during his first day in office. Shortly after taking the oath, Trump went to events across Washington, D.C., signing dozens of executive orders addressing the first priorities of his new administration. He issued pardons and commutations for January 6th rioters, pulled the U.S. out of climate and health accords, and made a point of mentioning sweeping changes to immigration in his inauguration speech Monday.
First, I will declare a national emergency at our southern border. All illegal entry will immediately be halted, and we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came.
The president did declare a national emergency at the southern border, paving the way for armed forces and the National Guard to be deployed. He also declared cartels foreign terrorist organizations. Other executive orders suspended refugee settlement for at least 4 months and cut off access to an app meant to help migrants apply for asylum in an orderly way. And the president set up a fight over birthright citizenship. He wants that constitutional right removed for children of undocumented immigrants, and it's already facing legal challenges. Shortly after the president put Sharpie to paper, the wheels started turning. Several cities spent last week bracing for massive immigration raids, rumored to start the day after the president took office, but the plans leaked, so ICE stood down, at least for now. The acting Homeland Security chief has also authorized agents to make arrests in places like schools and churches. It's all part of a promised mass deportation effort on the part of the Trump administration. And with everything going on now or in the works, there's concern, growing concern from immigrant communities, many of whom are here legally, about what this next 4 years will look like for them and their families. Hundreds of people packed immigration offices in the days before the Trump administration took power, working to schedule a new hearing or make sure that they were safe to stay in the country before any major changes went into effect.
I'm fearful. We are all fearful. The news, the gossip, that people are going to get deported, one gets very scared. But I have to take a risk.
The angst and uncertainty over what happens next, even as several groups, including organizations here at home, holding information sessions so that people know their rights. We wanted to go straight to the experts for this one. Here to get to the heart of the matter is Michael Sharma Crawford, a local immigration attorney. Thank you for being here in what is an uncertain time for many, many people. We're still learning a lot about the White House is doing, but it looks like ICE operations are at least being planned. For people who aren't close to this issue, how dire of a situation is it right now?
And thanks for letting me on and have this time. I think as far as ICE operations, you're going to see a return to some familiar things. People that are in jail for minor traffic violations that are undocumented or are out of status are going to get taken into custody by ICE and processed through that removal machine. They're going to get set an NTA, a court date, that kind of thing. So I think anyone going into jail is going to have to expect that, regardless of whether it's a severe crime or just a no driver's license. I think that people that already have orders of removal that are here and have been doing checkups because they're here with family members or children, they're going to have concerns about whether or not they're going to get picked up at their next check-in. Those are going to be issues. Certainly, ICE is looking at criminal aliens, gang members. That's a target that they want to crack down on very soon. But the problem becomes is some of those folks that they're targeting don't have a country to return to, meaning we don't have a way to return them to that country. So if we take them into custody, now what are we going to do with them? Are we going to make diplomatic arrangements with other countries and drop them in something close to where they live? Those are all unknowns to us as to how that operation is going to play out and how we can advise folks of what they're to expect.
Yeah, as you said, it's a spectrum, though. There's a long way to go between a traffic ticket and being a part of MS-13 or a Venezuelan gang. What are you telling your clients right now?
We're telling clients several things. Depending on who they are, the baseline is to have proof of 2 years in the United States. Part of that is there's a statutory piece that would allow agents to engage in what are known as expedited removals, and if you haven't been here for more than 2 years. So carry or maintain proof that you've been in the United States for more than 2 years. If you've been here for 10 years, begin to gather that proof. Gather proof of your ties to the United States. Make sure that that information is accessible to someone, whether it's you or someone else. So whether that's a box at home or somewhere on the internet, depending on what your savvy is, make sure that that can be got to. Certainly if you're detained, can someone get to that information? to have contacts so that you can provide information to your family members should you be taken into custody.
You're talking about proof and having to show essentially your papers knocks on the door of a lot of the criticism we heard during the gubernatorial run in Missouri last year, where they were talking about mass deportations of racial profiling for people who are here legally.
And it's a curious state when you talk about it at a state level, but yes, we already saw the incident with the TV personality in Colorado where someone said, show me your papers, and that incident. So I think that there is going to be a problem with the people that don't look like us are going to be suspicious and targeted. And I know they wanted to create a dial-in number to report folks that are undocumented. I don't know if that's going to come back again this time around, but we're going to foment some of that division in the community by setting us apart by our appearance and what we do for a living and those kinds of things.
We mentioned birthright citizenship off the top of the broadcast. This is already primed to become a legal battle. There's already a legal challenge here. What would this mean for your clients and their families, I guess, if those rights are stripped away?
So the proposed language in the executive order indicates that if you meet a set of certain criteria, either your parents are both not citizens or residents of the United States, or one of your parents isn't a citizen or resident of the United States, and the other is on a temporary visa. So think a non-immigrant visa. They're here in status, but they're on a visitor visa. They're on a student visa. They're on some form of temporary admission to the United States, and they bear a child on U.S. soil. Then the government is going to say that that child is not a citizen of the United States. The complication to that is the Constitution says that you are a citizen of the United States if you're born on U.S. soil and subject to the laws thereof. So the executive order says that you're born on U.S. soil, but not subject to the laws thereof. Well, we don't know what that means. I mean, does that mean that you're like a diplomat and you're immune? That legal complexity is going to be fought in courts far away from here. The practical aspect is, if you're a child born to immigrant parents who never had status in the United States, and you've been a citizen your whole life, and you're now 30, and you're going to try and fix your parents because you can file for them, and you have filed for them, what is this immigration service going to do with that application? Are they just going to shelve it until this legal battle is over? Are they which was going to add delays to that process, which is already easily 6 years long? So now we're going to add more delays to that? Or are they just going to dismiss it based on this executive order, and now you have to start all over again, depending on how far down the system you are? So from a direct consequence, that's the one I'm looking at for our clients to say, I'm going to have to sit down with them and have those discussions with them so they know what's coming.
All right, we'll leave it there. Michael Sharma Crawford, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
KMBC 9 News and Heart of the Matter will continue to watch the impact of these decisions made in Washington and what they mean for you. We'll have coverage on air and online at KMBC.com.